Hello, Dr. Chinedum. Good afternoon and welcome.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, absolutely.
Great.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank
Ibevon,
you. Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to log in first, so no hitches on this microphone today.
Yes, I appreciate that. Welcome. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So our other panelists going to join soon so that we can talk a bit.
Yes, they're going to join at 1:45. So in about 3 minutes, they should join. I can see that the RG is on as well.
Great.
Microphone isn't on, so we'll just check in at 1:45 so everyone can just settle in before.
Great.
We already have some people online already. That's how.
Some people are already waiting.
Yes, we already have people waiting. So
that's awesome.
Yes. So
is it a paid webinar?
No, ma, it's not.
It's free?
Yes, ma, it's free.
So can some of our family members watch?
Yes, absolutely. I'll send you the link now for them to register.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
You'll send it to my mail?
Yeah, I'll send it to your mail now, ma'am.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank
okay.
You.
All right. Olu, how far? How far with the thing?
Good afternoon, sir. Welcome. Hello, DG. Good afternoon, sir. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So the RG is on right now, but I don't know, something is off with his mic. I'll just call him to see if he can log out and log back in. Okay, the RG is correctly on now. Okay, if we're ready, we could just put our videos on so participants who are already online can see some of us. Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, great. Okay, I can see the RG now. Good afternoon, sir. Okay, sir, your mic is off. RG, your mic is off, so we cannot hear you.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Everyone's mic is off.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Oh. So we have we're expecting Mr. Izomike, and then we'll be all
And the president.
and the president. Yes.
Actually, he just tried to call me, so I don't know whether he's trying to get through. So maybe someone might reach out to him.
Okay, I'll do that.
That's the president of IID, not the president of Nigeria, by the way.
We understand, sir.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Izomike is on now. So it's just the president.
Hi.
Hello, welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, so I will, at this point, I'll just hand over to Mr. Candidate Johnson to continue with the program. And he's here already. Thank you, sir.
Okay, right, thanks. Well, I assume the program is going to start at
2, yes, but you know,
okay.
the pre-session thing that you were going to have.
Okay, well, I understand now there's been some confusion as to whether the Registrar General was going to be joining us at 2 p.m. So I assume that he's in the upper left-hand corner of my screen. So I assume that he is able to or is he going to be interrupted? I understand, sir, that you're likely to be on a flight shortly or at this time. Your microphone is muted.
So unmute your mic from your laptop. You'll see the icon.
Hello,
Okay.
sir.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
Yes,
Can you hear me?
yes, we can hear you now. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, sir.
So,
I'm actually, yes, well, 2 is close by, so I can give the keynote address on board my flight.
I see.
Luckily, the flight has been delayed, so we're supposed to leave at 1:30, but we're here waiting to board the flight. So I'm here. So
Okay,
I can give the keynote. Yes.
So what we're going to assume at 2 o'clock, if you can confirm, well, it's actually about 2:15 by our program. If you're able to confirm by 2:15 where you are, then we would know. If you can just send a message maybe to Imabong by WhatsApp or something, so we know whether you're about to board. So we know
Okay,
exactly
that's
what
fine.
to do. Yes, so that's
Okay,
what
that's
we
fine.
assume.
Okay, that's fine.
But whether the person who would speak after you would be Mrs. Ogemuda, who I know participated in the preparation of this law. So
Okay.
whether you're able to give it or not, she would.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, that's fine.
So, and
that's
if you are in the air at the time, then we will try and call upon you when you land and see whether.
Okay, sir.
So
okay.
She's going to give an overview in any event, and then what we're going to do is we have some questions we've already received related to topics which we would ask. Some of them about the resources of the commission, about the philosophy of its regulation, and we'll ask those questions. You may be able to join the question and answer session at the end. But
that's fine.
We would the order we will follow after Mrs. Mrs. Orisakwe Lawrence, I hope that you're okay now. Okay, you have not muted, just so you can say something so we can be sure.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Fantastic.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. That's fantastic. So what I would suggest, please, is that if my mic will be on at all times, so if anybody who's not speaking would simply mute their mic, it would help. So once you're referred to, that means that we don't have much distraction. And I assume that no participant is going to be able to speak on the session. So you had created, what we're going to do about order is that I would propose that after, assuming that the DG speaks, Mrs. Ogemudia would follow him. If he doesn't speak, Mr. Ogemudia will go first, and then will be followed by Dr. Orisakwe Lawrence, Chinedu Ezomike, and then Professor Ajayi. Okay, so that's how I hope we'll do it, and then we can make the comments as we deem appropriate. Of course, I think that Mrs. Ogemudia.
Hello.
Oh, are you a doctor? Dr. Ogemudia, Mrs. Ogemudia is one of those who participated in the drafting of this law, so she has a very valuable broad oversight. And I believe both with the introduction from the Registrar General and from her, we will have a lot of material to pick up on thereafter. So I think we're good to go on time.
Hello, Mr. Moderator.
The president is here now.
Mr. Moderator, good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Very well, thank you, sir.
Good. I think you should check your email box quickly, if you could.
Okay.
Alhaji Garba, how are you, sir?
Mr. President, how are you, sir?
Good to see you. Good to see you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah?
Thank you.
Very kind of you. Very kind.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Madam, how many minutes do we have? How many minutes would we be speaking for?
Maximum 10 minutes. Okay. But the shorter the better. I would have the person I would have imposed a longer burden on would have been Mrs. Ogemudia, because she would be drawing the picture for us in more wider terms.
Yeah.
And she knows it off the back of her hand anyway. So
yeah.
It's not a big deal for her.
You know, as I said, I couldn't speak yesterday, but I would like to look at the business side in terms of the World Bank Ease of Doing Business rankings and the parameters. So we actually see where we're going with the bill and what else we need to do that the bill may not be able to do.
Right, that's fantastic.
Okay.
So it's a good point to put you there, because, you know, I assume because Chinedu Ezomike is as an accountant, he's dealing with business advice to people from time to time. I assume that he was going to identify for us some of the still existing shortcomings. So both of you would am I correct?
Yeah, so I wanted to kind of look at the current issues and some of the problems that the bill will solve. And then hopefully, if there are any questions from people as specific questions, but I wanted to look at it in how it impacts businesses, SMEs, partnerships, and all that.
May I suggest that we swap you so that you come second, and then Dr. Orisakwe Lawrence comes third?
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I think that would be better because she's that ties it in. And Dr. Jai is going to talk about dispute resolution and several other things. I just wanted to give a broad view, sort of to close the discussion and on the key topics. So I think that he is able to give a bird's eye view from the background of he's dealing with businesses all the time and both an advocate and as a corporate lawyer. So I think that would be a good place for him he can sweep it all up at the end of the day. And then we'll start sending out the difficult questions. It's very nice for me to be not answering difficult questions for a change.
Yeah, I hear you.
And I'm delighted. Yes.
I hear you.
So we're set to start in 2 minutes, or rather 1 minute. So anybody who wants to take a quick dash for a glass of water, it's a good idea. This is a good time. I'm going to take such a dash myself, but I'll be sitting back here within 60 seconds.
Or a glass of wine, actually.
No comments.
Gigi, are you there?
I'm here, sir. Very much here, sir.
Okay, good. Mr. Ezomike. Mr. Ezomike?
Yes, I can hear you.
How are you doing?
I'm very good. Very good. Thank you for having us.
Very kind of you to have accepted a short notice. That's kind, very kind. Very well.
Thank you, Mr. Chris.
Yes. Is Mr. Gemudia there? Sure.
Yes, she's there. She just took the moderator's advice for a 1 minute break.
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here with my cup of water.
And is Prof there?
Yeah,
Professor
very
Kanye?
much, yeah.
Oh, now I can see him. Yes.
Good afternoon, sir.
How are you doing, Kanye? How's it going?
Very well.
Perhaps I should also actually wear my jacket because it seems everybody is well geared up. Eh?
I think you're well geared up.
I think I'm too casual.
I'm happy to take off my jacket if that's what you like.
Even though it's a public holiday. But
yeah, me and Coin are properly, suited up. I just wondering, Okay. So yeah, me up to you now.
Right.
Thank you very much.
So, it's a pleasure. So it's 2 o'clock now. It's 2:01 now. So you all have a copy of the program. So if we go live right now, we're ready to start as the agenda has set out.
I don't have the
Everyone will kindly let us know that the participants are on. Okay, we have 138 participants.
Yes,
already.
we're live.
Participants are here already. So we have now about 130 something participants. Time is 2:01. So I want to, on behalf of the Institute, welcome everybody. And I just want to do a very short introduction. The house is filled, and I want to welcome everybody to this very, very important webinar, which is discussing the Cama bill. I won't want to waste any of our time, and I will be introducing in no order, but just bear with me as I see the participants from my view here. I will start with the moderator of today, that is Mr. Yemi Candidate Johnson. We thank you for accepting to moderate this very important event. You're welcome, Mr. Candidate Johnson. And of course, I also have here Dr. Chinedum Orisakwe. Madam, you're welcome. We thank you for being part of this. Thank you very much. We have here also Dr. Chinedu Ezomike. You are welcome, Dr. Ezomike. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yes. I have here Ms. Ozofu Ogemudia. Madam, we welcome you. Thank you very much. Ms. Ogemudia is representing the chairman of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. And she's, like the moderator said earlier, very versatile on this matter. And of course, our good prof is here, Professor Koinsola. Welcome you, Prof. Thank you very much for coming. And it's my pleasure to introduce the keynote speaker, the guest speaker for today, the Registrar General of the Corporate Affairs Commission, Alhaji Garuba Abubakar. Alhaji Abubakar, you are welcome, and thank you very much for making it.
Thank you, sir. Unfortunately, they have just called my flight, so I will join you on arrival in Bauchi for maybe the question and answer session. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We wish you a very safe journey.
Amen. Thank you again. Thank you.
And of course, the chief host of today is the President and Chairman of Governing Council of the Institute of Directors Nigeria, Chief Chris Olufunlola Okunawa, a fellow of the Institute. Mr. President, you are welcome.
Thank you, Mr. DG.
Thank you. And without wasting any more time, I want to invite Mr. President to please give us your opening remarks. Mr. President, sir.
Thank you, DG. Members of the Governing Council, Executive Committee of the Institute of Directors Nigeria, who are here present, our keynote speaker, Alhaji Garuba Abubakar, the Registrar General Corporate Affairs Commission, our very distinguished panelists, and our moderator, Mr. Yemi Kandi Johnson, distinguished participants, esteemed fellows and members of the Institute, gentlemen of the media, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all on behalf of the Governing Council of the Institute of Directors Nigeria to this edition of our webinar series with the theme, Cama Bill to 2020, the way forward. I wish to especially welcome our distinguished keynote speaker, Alhaji Garuba Abubakar, who incidentally is on his way to Bauchi right now, but will join us later. Our panelists, like I said before, or they were introduced earlier on, Mr. Yemi Kandi Johnson is our moderator. Of course, our panelists, Professor Jayi SAN, is the managing partner of Olanihuwa Jayi LP. Mr. Chinedu Ezebike, partner, head, commercial practice group, Anderson Tax in Nigeria. Dr. Chinedum Orisakwe, executive director of Corporate Services Nigeria, Electricity Liability Management Limited. And of course, Ms. Ozofu Ogemudia, partner, Udo Doma and Bello Osage, who is representing the chairman of the NESD today. This team of experts in their various field endeavors brings to us today decades of experience in finance, trade and investment, governance, law, and administration, amongst others. They are highly skilled corporate executives, versatile business leaders with several years of active experience working in various sectors of the economy. And I'm confident that we will do justice to our informational and educative needs at this webinar. I also wish to welcome all the eminent personalities, our guests and associates, and friends of our great institute at this event. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the Institute of Directors Nigeria is the apex professional body in Nigeria with a mandate to cater for and represent directors in their individual capacities across the various sectors of the economy. We have made significant and highly impressive strides working closely with government, corporate organizations, bilateral chambers, and diplomatic missions to raise the standard of corporate governance and leadership in the private and public sectors which has attracted worthy and qualitative members to the Institute. Since the advent of Nigeria's second democratic dispensation, the Institute's advocacy has intensified the promotion of corporate governance and best practices in all tiers of government and the private sector, with emphasis in the development of the nation's top talents and fostering resourceful and ethical leadership in all the sectors of our economy. We continue to intensify our constructive engagement with both government and the private sector for the mutual benefit of all stakeholders and the nation at large. As a prime leadership organization, IOD Nigeria helps directors to fulfill their legal and professional responsibilities for the benefit of businesses and the society. It is a non-for-profit membership-based organization that collaborates with and enjoys the support of all regulatory institutions in the country, as well as international multilateral organizations. The Institute is recognized locally and internationally for its written role in the corporate governance practice and advocacy, and has been cited as the most successful professional body in the country with sharp focus in these areas. We are therefore happy to know that the journey of the review of the Corporate and Allied Matters Act, Cama, which started in 2018, has already reached its crescendo with the new bill already passed by the National Assembly and is currently awaiting the nod of our President Muhammadu Buhari, GCON. As we all look forward to the President has sent this bill, the Institute of Directors Nigeria, the apex advocacy body in governance, deemed it necessary to call a town hall meeting to discuss what would change with the new bill. It is also gladdening that all stakeholders in this bill have finally come to a consensus on the various areas of conflict, and both the executive and legislative arms of our government have reached an agreement. It is therefore expected that the President should sign the bill any moment from now. The revised Cama bill provides an opportunity for us as a nation to again add more impetus to our quest to improve the ease of doing business in our country. It's our belief that the bill, once signed into law, would also confirm Nigeria's compliance with many international trade treaties, as it has put in place many internationally accepted best practices in company formation and ownership. These are the issues that are of tremendous importance to directors globally, and Nigeria is not an exception. IOD Nigeria is representing directors from all walks of life, therefore, hopes that this webinar today will, one, facilitate a conversation between the public and private sectors on the provisions of the bill, especially drawing attention to the various changes. Two, set an agenda to advocate for the immediate assent to the bill by the President of the Federation in order to ensure that investors and business owners can operate under favorable business conditions. Three, facilitate the development of a policy and institutional support framework that promotes an inclusion of all stakeholders on issues bordering on the Nigerian corporate space. Four, create further awareness on the expectations and requirements of the 2019 Cama bill on businesses and investors. Five, seek to open an agenda for further discussions that may develop a framework for balancing of the views of all sides, that is, regulators and operators on the bill. And six, suggest a pathway to strike a balance about what changes we made now and after the containment of COVID-19 pandemic, and provide directors with practical advice that will improve organizational performance, fuel innovation, and possibly provide ways of navigating through the crisis. To ensure successful implementation of the outcome of this event, the Institute will work with relevant stakeholders and also collaborate with the government. Our distinguished directors and leaders, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to accordingly encourage all of us to be open-minded and participate actively in this webinar. so as to take advantage of the enormous wealth of experience of our keynote speaker, our panelists, and of course, our moderator. I thank the chairman and members of the Research and Advocacy Committee of the Institute, as well as the management of the IOD Secretariat for organizing this webinar. I thank you all for your attention, but I cannot end this speech if I do not recognize the CAC for the support they have given the Institute of Directors in our bid to also become a chartered organization. Finally, I wish all our Muslim brothers El Mubarak and wish you a lovely weekend too. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'd like us to move very quickly to the business and to try and contain the program quite tightly, if that's all right. I know that we don't want to take too much time, too much of people's time. These events can be quite exhausting. It's a very important webinar. It is appropriate that the Institute of Directors should be the one leading this because, of course, the impact of the new companies law is one that is going to have an impact on the business of Nigerians across the board, and particularly directors, shareholders, investors, and in fact, and employees of companies. It's critical and it is overdue. Of course, this is the first amendment we've made to our companies law, and I think about more than 20 years. Nice. Before that, the 1968 companies law was on our books for 22 years. Nobody did anything about it. In this same period, countries across the world have amended their company laws multiple times to meet increasing challenges and increasing innovation in the way businesses are organized. So we're coming to the party late, but it's not too late, notwithstanding. As the President has already pointed out, the companies law, which was passed by both houses of the National Assembly, is before the President. It's an urgent matter, and I assume that the President is going to take it with the urgency that it requires. It's an extensive remodeling of our company's practice. And I think that in the course of this session, we'll have cause for the edification of members to discuss the history, the purpose, the philosophy behind what is being done there, the lessons we've learned from the law we've had in the past. I see someone sent a message saying, would the key sections be highlighted? Well, this session is going to address with a powerful panel of experts, the governance issues, the liability issues, membership, insolvency, protection of the public. There's a whole range of issues that are discussed, and this is going to be the Bible for corporate practice, both in respect to governance and corporate finance for years to come. Now, we were going to start with the Director General of the Corporate Affairs Commission because it is his organization that will have primary responsibility to regulate the practice of companies in Nigeria. Unfortunately, he is boarding a flight to fly to, I think he said Bauchi, and he'll be in the air. I hope that he will land safely in time to participate perhaps in the closing session. However, this is not a problem for us. I will introduce him when he comes back. And I think that every problem creates an opportunity. And the opportunity we have here is that the task of giving us an appropriate overview has been handed over to an expert. And I have to say, with very great respect, she might not look like a heavyweight, but she is a heavyweight in corporate practice. I'm referring, of course, to Mrs. Ozofun Ogemudia, who is a partner in Odor Domambele Osage's corporate advisory, private equity, and mergers and acquisition teams. She is the vice chairperson of the Nigerian Bar Association section of Business Law Committee on Mergers, Acquisitions, and Corporate Restructurings. She was the head of the technical advisory committee that advised the Nigerian Senate on the bill to repeal and reenact the Companies and Allied Matters Act 1990 and the Investment and Securities Act 2007. She is the thematic lead of the National Assembly Business Environment Roundtable, regulatory working group that was set up to assist the National Assembly in identifying and improving bills that relate to any aspect of the regulatory environment. She has been recognized in the past 3 years by the International Financial Law Review as one of the IFLR 100 women leaders. She is rated as highly regarded lawyer for her mergers and acquisitions and private equity practice by the IFLR 1000 in 2019, and is recommended as a national leader in Nigeria for her mergers and acquisitions and governance policy practice by Who's Who Legal Nigeria. Actually, I was about to bow, but I think it's just fine to introduce Mrs. Ogemudia and ask her to kindly lead us through the changes in this momentous and groundbreaking law. Mrs. Ogemudia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Candy Johnson. Thank you to the Institute of Directors for having me, and good afternoon to all our participants. Like our moderator said, we were going to start with an overview of the bill by the Registrar General of the CAC, And he has very kindly provided us with some of his thoughts on what the key features of the bill are. So I'm going to just lead with that. The Companies and Allied Matters Act, as you've already heard, was first enacted in 1990. It has had some minimal amendments to it, but not a major overhaul. And as some of our participants might have noticed, when the COVID-19 pandemic hit and it was not possible for us to hold physical meetings, AGMs, board meetings, etc., it became difficult to navigate this challenge using the tools that the Cama gives us. And the CAC has had to be quite innovative in trying to devise a way to help businesses continue to hold their meetings and carry on business, notwithstanding the limitations of the Cama. So that's just an illustration of the reason why a complete repeal and reenactment of the Companies and Allied Matters Act is required. The act was modeled on the English Companies Act of 1985, and notwithstanding numerous amendments to the English Act, we've continued to stay with what we had since 1990. So it's a very welcome development, and we believe that this bill is going to really project Nigeria forward in terms of ease of doing business, in terms of our readiness to join the international community and demonstrate that we're very serious about being the largest economy, arguably in the continent. So as the RG has pointed out to us, the bill is divided into 7 parts and it has 870 sections. So it's quite a large document. The current Cama, 1990, is divided into 4 parts and has 612. So it's also a large document, but this is much larger. There are about 167 new sections in the Cama. Some of the reasons why the Cama is so, well, there's been a lot of buzz around it, and there's so much expectation about what the Cama bill will achieve once it's passed into law, is because of some of the new innovations it's going to introduce into our body of company law. So I'll just highlight some of them. I'll start with those that the RG had recognized. So for instance, the membership of the Corporate Affairs Commission is going to be, of the board, is going to be increased. And significantly, the newcomers to the commission are not just maybe representatives of government ministries and parastatals, but there was an attempt to include a voice for the private sector. So for instance, the National Association of Small and Medium Enterprises is going to have a seat at that table. In addition, the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, representing company secretaries who are primarily the leading customers at the Corporate Affairs Commission, are going to be represented on the board of the CAC as well. In addition, the Cama currently only recognizes ICANN as being able to provide nominations for appointment of an accountant to the board of the CAC, but the ANAN, Association of Nigeria National Accountants of Nigeria, is also going to be included. One of the drivers of the bill is to promote and support small and medium scale enterprises. And so there are lots of innovations here that will seek to achieve that. So for instance, the bill provides for single member and single director companies. It's going to make it possible for companies to be incorporated by sole proprietors, which currently is not the case. And as you might know, sole proprietors in Nigeria operate as they're unincorporated, which means they have no limited liability and their access to finance and credit is minimal, if at all. In addition, the thresholds for small companies are going to be revised upwards. So in the 1990 Cama, the thresholds for a small company are that the company's turnover should not exceed 2 million naira, and the company's net asset value should not exceed 1 million naira. Now, those might have been high thresholds in 1990 and would have brought a lot of small businesses within that net. But over time, given the devaluation of the Naira, those thresholds are really impractical. And so the bill seeks to increase the thresholds so that small companies will be defined as companies that, amongst other things, have a turnover of not more than 120 million Naira and net asset value of 60 million Naira. As you might know, the Nigerian economy is recognized for the fact that small and medium scale enterprises are really driving growth in the economy. And so the bill is seeking to support them by recognizing most of them that come within this threshold as small companies. And then for small companies, there's an increased list of benefits. For instance, they will not be required to have a company secretary. They will not be required to hold annual general meetings. They will continue to be entitled to file modified financial statements and accounts. They will not be, well, all companies, no company will be mandated to have a corporate sale. So there will be less of a regulatory burden on small companies, and hopefully that will enable them to encourage them to incorporate so that they have access to the banking system and credit, and also be able to direct their resources towards focusing on improving their business rather than spending so much time just to comply with various regulations in the law. The framework for registering companies limited by a guarantee has been remodeled under the bill, and similar to incorporated trustees, those proposing to set up companies limited by guarantee will, amongst other things, be required to notify the public so that people who have a legitimate objection can be heard. The consent of the Attorney General is required currently under Cama and will be retained. But there is a process to encourage the facilitation of a quick review of all applications for companies limited by guarantee. And so there's a time frame for the Attorney General's approval, and there's an alternative route to getting registered as a company limited by guarantee. There are delays, and that would involve notifications to the public, and then the CAC reviewing and further notifying the public, just to be sure that before companies can be registered as companies limited by guarantee, there's a more thorough review of the process and the promoters behind such companies. In addition, the thresholds for limitation of liability for companies limited by guarantee is going to be increased. Currently, the threshold is 10,000 Naira, which is really insignificant today. Is going to be increased to 100,000 Naira. In keeping with global best practices, there's going to be an introduction of a requirement to disclose persons with significant control of all companies, not just public companies. Right now in the Cama, there is a requirement to disclose if you are a substantial shareholder in a public company, but there are new provisions in the Cama bill that will require disclosure of persons with significant control in all companies. And this is to encourage transparency and to discourage the use of companies or SPVs as a way to shield fraudulent activities. The register of persons with significant control will not be maintained just only by the company, as is the case in the current Cama, but the CAC is required to also maintain that register. There's a provision for independent directors on the board of public companies. And then there is significant amendments to insolvency provisions. So for instance, currently under Cama, we have winding up as the main resort in where a company is insolvent. But two significant developments are going to be introduced by the bill. One of them is company administration, which was borrowed mainly from the current UK framework. And it entails the appointment of an administrator where a company is either insolvent or is likely to become insolvent. And the rationale behind administration is for the administrator to see if there is a way to rescue the company and keep it going as a going concern. It might involve selling some of the assets of the company so that the company can continue carrying on business with what's left. It might involve renegotiating contracts and reaching an arrangement with the creditors of the company. Most importantly, administration comes with a statutory moratorium, so that once a company can go into administration, its creditors will be unable to enforce security or appoint a receiver. And if a receiver has been appointed, that will be suspended, so that the company will have time to come up with a proposal that will take care of its creditors and also hopefully see the company work its way back to health and profitability. There's also company voluntary arrangements, which are essentially contractual arrangements that a company can make with its creditors to restructure its debts and be able to survive the financial hard times it might be in at the time. Company voluntary arrangements can work hand in hand with administration, so that under the company voluntary arrangements, which I'll call CVAs for short, the company can take advantage of the moratorium under an administration. Very importantly, the bill will seek to introduce netting provisions into our body of company law. Currently, there is no provision in any Nigerian legislation that takes care of netting. Netting is important for providing a framework for companies to engage in complex financial transactions. Netting is the process by which the risk is reduced in financial contracts. So the kind of contracts that netting is relevant for are like derivative transactions, repurchase contracts, etc. And the netting provisions in the Cama are based on the International Swaps and Derivatives Association, ISDA, 2006 Model Netting Act. If the Cama bill is passed as currently drafted, it will significantly increase the ability of Nigerian companies to enter into these complex transactions, such as currency swaps, and be able to hedge risks in dealing with commodities and
Sorry, she's been silenced by technology.
Obviously, I think that's what happened.
Mr. Ogemudia, you're frozen. Well, while we're trying to get her back, can I just point out to participants, please, that we're taking questions and answer in the Q&A box, which is at the bottom of your screen. And there's a chat box. So if you want to say hello to your friends, can you do that in the chat box and not in the Q&A box? And the Q&A box is from where we'll be extracting some of the questions that we may ask the panelists. If you will state who your question is for in particular and who you are, then that'll help us to be able to use the questions thereafter. I think that Mrs. Ogemudia is going to try and go out and come back in again. So just leave 15 seconds for that and see what we need to do thereafter. I think she was almost at the end of her presentation in any event, but Imebong, can you tell us if you're able to get her back?
Okay, sir. She'll join in back now.
Well, when you have these
She's back.
Okay, great. Things are going to go wrong. We just take the blows as we go and keep moving. So this is not a big disruption. Mrs. Ogemudia, it's nice to have you back.
I'm so sorry. I suddenly realized I was talking to myself.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't know where I got cut off. But I think I'll just round up by saying I was talking about limited partnerships and limited liability partnerships, and the fact that currently we don't have any provision for that in the Cama. We have it, for instance, in the Lagos State Partnerships Law, but even the constitutionality of that has been in question. And so the Cama bill will introduce new corporate entities, such as the limited liability partnership, and then also the limited partnership. The limited liability partnership will be a corporate entity with separate legal personality from its partners, with limited liability for its partners, etc. So that's a very welcome development. I think I'll round off by saying there are robust introductions to the provisions on incorporated trustees. There's stronger oversight powers given to the Corporate Affairs Commission in relation to incorporated trustees, including the power to remove trustees that are found to be erring or not complying with their statutory requirements. I also want to add, in the Cama, you will notice that the quantum of penalties is specified. So you have some penalties that are 5 naira, 10 naira, 100 naira, and like we've already said, this act is 30 years old. When it was passed, 500 naira meant more than it does today. And so you find that the penalties for breach of the Cama are insignificant, and then they do not act as a deterrent in any way. Another thing that comes across when you read the Cama is that there's criminal liability for a lot of offenses. Maybe you don't file something and then it's a crime and you're liable to imprisonment if convicted. So what the bill seeks to do is significantly reduce the criminal liability under the Act, because most of the obligations under the Act are reporting obligations, etc. But in relation to those things that relate to, for instance, fraud, the criminal penalty, the criminal nature of the breach is retained, but the courts are given the discretion to determine penalties, fines, and sentencing. For all other infractions, they will not be criminal penalties, but the CAC will be entitled to determine the fines payable by regulation. So that will ensure that maybe in 10 years' time or 20 years' time, if we're still working with the same act, the CAC will be able to revise penalties to ensure that they are reflective of the realities of the day. And that way, they can act as a real deterrent to breaches of the Act. So I think I'll stop there and hopefully have laid the foundation that we can build upon for further discussion. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mrs. Ogemudia. We're getting some very interesting questions, and I'd encourage participants to continue to add those questions. We would ask them. There are already questions for you, so you're already on the hot seat, but we'll try and let us go through the panelists before we have the Q&A session, which I hope should be quite exciting. It's great to have that broad overview, and you know it better than most. You participated to a great degree in this. The next speaker that we have is going to discuss the impact on businesses and some practical aspects of the corporate practice, governance, and issues which he has dealt with in his capacity as a practitioner in a leading accounting firm. I'm going to introduce Mr. Chinedu Ezomike, who is the partner and head commercial practice group of Anderson Tax Nigeria. He has 11 years experience in the provision of professional tax and regulatory services to clients in various industries. His tax and regulatory expertise covers corporate tax planning, tax due diligence, tax advisory, and compliance for local and multinational companies in various industries. He has advised several companies on income tax issues, indirect tax management, corporate tax structuring, and regulatory compliance. He also serves as a resource person at the Enterprise Development Center of the Lagos Business School. So he will give us a business perspective, please, Mr. Ezomike, of corporate law and the changes that are anticipated in this new act.
Thank you very much for having me. Thanks, Mr. Amy, for that introduction. I mean, in my view, I would say that the Cama, as currently is actually running the risk of becoming obsolete and irrelevant, really. Like the last speaker said, it's a 30-year-old document, and hasn't had any serious revision up to date. And if businesses, by their nature, are very dynamic. Things change every day, and when the law regulating businesses typically refuses to change, that is a major problem. When you advise businesses, it is important that the laws governing how they perform in Nigeria meets their need, if I would say that. I mean, globally, there are a lot of funds looking for homes. There's a lot of capital looking for a conducive environment for investments. And so that deals with the issue of competitiveness. Nigeria as a country needs to be as competitive as any, so that you can attract the right investors and attract the right funds. Of course, we have a lot of other issues, from security issues to infrastructure issues. So the things like regulations are easier to deal with, and they are the ones that, and so I'm happy that, we are focused on that now and trying to get it right. And I'm happy that it's not just, trying to amend the existing laws, but basically repealing and revamping it completely. I mean, we have COVID-19 situation right now where everybody's having their meetings online, for example, and we have a Cama law that doesn't recognize electronic meetings. It insists that company meetings has to be physical. You are in the age of internet where documents are electronically stored. Emails are the mode of communication for businesses. And yet you have a Cama law that doesn't recognize electronic communication, doesn't recognize electronic storage of information and all that. So it is clearly not fit for purpose right now. On the issue of partnership, for example, I remember a few years ago, we were dealing with a private equity fund that was trying to set up a limited partnership, interlibrary partnership in Nigeria. And realized that there is no, apart from in Lagos State, where you have the limited partnership law, there is no guidance, there's no governance, there's no framework for setting up such partnerships across the country. And of course, that partnership is a very popular business structure in Nigeria. So you begin to wonder who is the Cama really meant for, and what is the use if it doesn't serve the purpose of the business. So I think some of these issues are being dealt with in this new bill, and I think that's a very good one. The journey for this new bill, has been also a long one in coming. 2016, 2017, a lot of efforts had already gone into it. 2018, it went to the president, the National Assembly then passed it, and it went to the president for assent. Unfortunately, the issue on the companies limited by guarantee, I think that was a major issue, because the Attorney General's powers to approve was removed, and that was the major reason why the president pushed it back. And so that has delayed us 2 more years. Hopefully, it will get signed this time around, so that businesses can take advantage of it. And on the positive, I mean, it aligns with the whole transparency issue and the whole competitive issue that the new world demands. For example, the issue of beneficial ownership. If you look at over the past 10 years, there has been this move for transparency, from FATCA to country by country reporting to automatic exchange of information and all that. So this aligns with that we need to know who owns the companies to avoid undue assets hiding and all that. So that is a very positive one. And I think the country will benefit if the bill is signed in that regard. So in terms of competitiveness, in terms of transparency, in terms of technology, enabling businesses to do what they need to do in the current space, I think the bill aligns with that. We are all just hoping that it gets signed. Earlier in the year, we had the Finance Act signed. So this is another, which was a very positive one. So this Cama bill is another very positive one in that light, trying to revamp our business laws, business tax and corporate and all that, just to to just bring things up to speed. We're in a situation where, you know, the business environment is heavily challenged. Even before COVID, I mean, we all knew that the country as a business environment is difficult. So when you have laws that then even make it more difficult or constraints businesses, I mean, that's not just the way to go. So with the Finance Act already signed, and then hopefully this one gets signed, these are positive developments in this space. Of course, there is a small issue of a definition of what's a small company, because in the Finance Act, it says a small and medium company is between 25 million, okay, less than 25 million is a small company, and then between 25 and 100 million is a medium-sized company. But the bill is defining a small company as 120 million. So it appears that there's still a bit of discrepancy in who is a small business in Nigeria, because it would be good if the two laws are kind of aligned. Apart from that, I mean, SMEs are the engine of growth for any economy. In Nigeria, they contribute at least 48% of national GDP. SMEs employ at least 84% of all, you know, employees. And in a country where you have a serious employment issues, it is SMEs you need to look at to grow. So I'm happy that the bill tries to remove undue regulations, because I mean, things like having company secretary, auditing, even having to audit, to have an auditor even when you didn't do any business for the year, and all that is being, you know, streamlined, so that you don't overregulate SMEs. You know, you need to allow them to thrive and to grow. Single directorships. So if I have an idea to do a business, I'm able to do it, you know, get incorporated and do it. Not to be forced to remain as unincorporated unless I have more than 2 directors. So those are positives in that regard, and we hope that the president will assent quickly so that we start enjoying the benefits. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ezomike. You have teed up very nicely the next speaker, because really company law is to regulate a legal and an economic device. That's all that a company is. There's nothing magical about it. And we've assumed that it's necessary for us to use that vehicle for the purposes of promoting and increasing economic activity in the country. And this therefore takes us to what is in fact the substantial ambition of this law. As my friend and brother, Professor Ajayi, pointed out yesterday, it's all about enabling business. So we have an expert to talk about that particular aspect and tell us how the impression of this bill in that space as far as enabling business across the board. And I'd like to introduce Dr. Chinedum Orisakwe Lawrence, who is the Executive Director, Corporate Services, Nigeria Electricity Liability Management Fund. Now, she's a lot of things. She's first-class accounting graduate at the University of Lagos, 1982, fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. She holds an MSc degree in banking and finance and a PhD in credit management. She's an honorary senior member of the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria, a senior certified human resources professional, and the American Society for Human Resource Management. She's a certified member of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria, and also a certified facilitator. She worked in the Nigerian banking industry for over 25 years, where she held senior managerial positions in several banks. Dr. Chinedum Orisakwe Lawrence, over to you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Candidate Johnson. Good afternoon to the representatives of the IOD. Thank you for having me. Good afternoon, co-panelists and all participants. It's my pleasure to be on this webinar. It is a welcome development indeed that Cama Bill 2020 is coming up. You don't make a law and leave it unrevised for decades. Life itself is dynamic. Every day things change. Every day processes and procedures have to change. So this is a welcome development. And the speakers who have spoken before me have spoken about the benefits that the country will gain from the Cama Bill. No doubt, the Cama Bill is aimed at improving the ease of doing business. And this is the area that I want to look at. In 2017, Nigeria was ranked as 169 out of 190 countries by the World Bank Doing Business Index. And this improved to 146 last year. And in 2020, we are at 131. So that means business-wise, we are getting some things right. Thanks to the Executive Order 001 of 2017 on the promotion of transparency and efficiency in the business environment and other reforms. In terms of what the Cama bill will do, we've spoken about a more competitive and transparent business environment. Now we have the single person companies, and we are hoping that our young people, rather than being more of job seekers, will become entrepreneurs because they can now incorporate a company. A young person can go out there and incorporate a company and become an employer of labor. So we're hoping that this will even create more jobs. In terms of all the concessions that the small companies will enjoy, this is awesome. Raising the cap from 2 million to 120 million in terms of turnover for small companies. This is awesome. And we are hoping that we're going to have so many more of these companies come out and be incorporated. And therefore, we will have a deeper and richer business environment. And we're also hoping for inflow of foreign investment, which is very, very critical for Nigeria. Look at the exchange rates today. On the black market, you're buying $1 at 472 Naira. This is crazy. But if we are able to get it right and we have inflows of foreign investment, we hope that dollars can come back in and drive down the exchange rate for the country. And then we are hoping also that people will have more access to credit. But right now, I want us to even look at what the World Bank considers in the rankings for doing business. Let's look at some of the indicators so that we know how far the Cama bill can lead us, and if there are other things that we need to do after the bill has been signed into law. The first one is starting a business. The second is dealing with construction permits. The third, getting electricity. The fourth, registering property. The fifth, getting credit. Protecting minority investors, paying taxes, trading across borders, enforcing contracts, employing workers, contracting with the government. Now, Cama will do a lot, as previous speakers have spoken. However, I think that there is a lot more that has to be done because Cama is addressing the regulatory framework, and a lot of issues will be on the table of the Corporate Affairs Commission for implementation. Now, I don't want us to see Cama as a panacea or a magic wand that resolves all our business issues. So I want to look at some of the other things we can put in place. For instance, the Corporate Affairs Commission today is going to be implementing this when it's signed into law. And by the time you look at what the World Bank is actually measuring, there are three words that are sticking out. The World Bank is measuring more of procedures, time, and cost to register a business, to get a permit, to do whatever you want to do. Measurement of procedures, time, and cost. Now, the new bill isn't going to give us procedures, isn't going to give us turnaround time. Therefore, the CAC, when the bill is signed into law, will have to get together stakeholders. We've heard that the board will be made up of representatives from ICANN and all that. I also recommend from the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria, so that when the bill is signed, these groups will come together and articulate tight processes measure turnaround time for incorporating a business. How many days should it take from start to conclusion? If you're conducting a search, how many days should it take from start to conclusion? If you're winding up a business, how many days should it take? Then we need to put in place a way to monitor what we have set as our targets. How do we engage our customers? How do we monitor their experience? How do we know what the customers are going through? What are their complaints? The CAC needs to do a whole lot. And I also think that the branch offices of the CAC must be empowered to start and conclude some of these transactions so that everybody does not need to come to Abuja to have transactions done. Because at the moment, I've interacted with quite a number of people who are filing returns, coming to Abuja to file returns for businesses registered in the States. Cessation of a business, some people are on it 2 months, 3 months. So even if the bill is signed into law, the processes have to be articulated carefully, painstakingly, so that we can actually reap a quantum leap. We're not just looking for a marginal improvement. I think the country needs a quantum leap in terms of ease of doing business. Outside of the CAC, you look at number 3 on that list, getting electricity. How is the Cama bill going to get us electricity? So you see that we have a whole lot more to do to work on the electricity sector and get it right. For us to actually attract the businesses from outside the country, they need to know that they will get electricity, because this is the #1 thing that hikes the cost of production. And this is the reason why many of the companies we had in Nigeria, the Michelins of this world, they left the country because they didn't have electricity. And then you look at the public service, the way it is structured today. I think we need a whole paradigm shift. If it is public agencies who are going to implement the provisions of the new bill, we need a paradigm shift such that the public sector begins to function with private sector mentality, such that the processes that will be put in place will run like a conveyor belt, where you don't need to know somebody in an agency to help push your file. So all these things have to be in place for the new bill to work efficiently and effectively. And then you look at distribution of goods and services. By the time these companies come in and there is no good network of roads, or the foreign companies come in and their staff are kidnapped, what are we talking about? So we have a whole lot more to do. And then I'll talk about the collective will of everyone, of every Nigerian. It's not just about this new bill. We all must have a collective will to do things right and to do the right thing, so that when the bill is signed to law and the processes are put in place and the agencies who are working on it get their processes right, get their turnaround time, begin to monitor the execution of the processes, engage stakeholders, engage customers, and you and I, Nigerians, are ready to do the right thing, then I believe that we would achieve a quantum leap in terms of ease of doing business. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Orisakwe Lawrence. You know, it's when I hear people like you speak, as the speakers here, you know, I wonder really why Nigeria is in so much difficulty. But then the appropriate story is that what typifies our behavior is that we like to dress very well and we like to wear gold items, but we don't really bother about what is the substance between them. So you've broken it down, you've gone to the heart of the substance. I mean, this panel, I wonder with a law like this, we're going to emblazon across the world that we've created this new corporate masterpiece, which will have problems in itself, like the one that we had before. We created this document and people were scrambling to understand it after it had been presented. Where is the publicity? Where is the analysis? Where is the public discussion? Where is the debate? What is the agenda of this law? how does it fit into national economic policy? What is it intended to achieve? And you don't regulate companies just to show you know company law. You regulate companies so that you can generate business and so you can bring capital into business. So these are the tasks. So if that is a holistic view of our economic policy, then these questions you're asking would have been asked and answered before. Maybe when the DG comes back, he can tell us a bit more sort of the RG philosophy of this. But thank you very much. Yeah. Now, you know, we've had these speeches, and again, I say it's fascinating to have again and to invite the next speaker, who is a friend, who's a brother, who, as his CV disclosed, he was not only a precocious child, he was a brilliant student, and then he got his first degree with honors from the University of Ife. He has never stopped annoying people with his brilliance, and several distinctions in his studies. He was called to the Nigerian bar in 1980. He obtained an LLM from Harvard University in 1982, a PhD in international markets from Cambridge University in 1991. And in 2000, he was elevated to the rank of senior advocate in Nigeria, a rank which he wears with great dignity and aplomb. Now, it is good to bring a big masquerade to sweep up the floor, as they say in my own language. And so I'd like to invite Professor Koinsola Ajayi, senior advocate in Nigeria, who is the managing partner of Olaniwa Ajayi LP, one of the leading law firms in Africa, to sweep this thing up for us. You're mute.
Thank you very much, Mr. Candy Johnson, senior advocate, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm going to start from where Mr. Candy Johnson ended, which is about being precocious. And so I'm going to be like him because he's a very contrary man and he's always opposing everybody's views. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to oppose what everybody has said. And I'm happy the RG is not here. So please, nobody should tell him what I said.
Yes.
So, Mrs. of the Media, I'm sorry, I'm going to throw you under the bus because I don't agree we have a good bill. I think we've lost a big opportunity, but all is not lost. I would honestly say that we have not replaced the law. We don't have a new law. We have amendments to a law that is, you know, not 30 years old. Is, you know, more or less, you know, 1948 law. The Companies Act, which we had in 1968, was UK Companies Act of 1948. And then we expanded that a bit in 1990. And what we have done now is just to panel beat that. And so why do I say so? And I'll just take just a few things that have been spoken about. And, you know, the RG had, you know, spoken about this a number of times, and Dr. Gemudia has given us an overview of what the law says. And I think I like to look at it from the point, the philosophical point Mr. Candy Johnson made, which is, what is the essence of this law? The essence of this law, I don't agree with him that it's not magical. It is magical because this law does what only God does, which is create a human being, right? Complete law creates a human being. That's what it does, basically. And so, because before the Companies Law, you know, people could do business. And so the law said, okay, let us create this being, which is separate the owner of the business from the business. So this law is about business, and hence, you know, the points made by Dr. Rasito Lawrence as to how is this going to help us in the country? What are the things that it should do? Now, the law has not been signed. Why? Because the Attorney General still wants to control companies limited by guarantee. First question, which companies are limited by guarantee? Charities, CSOs, churches, and so on and so forth. Now, these are guys that I said, I would have no limit to my guarantee. So why should the Attorney General be concerned about that? If anything, he should be concerned about companies where Mr. Johnson says, okay, you know what? When I run this company and it goes broke, 1 million naira and I'm free. On the other hand, you have a company where the man says, look, if it goes broke, take everything I have. So the first question is, why does the Attorney General want to have a say in companies limited by guarantee? And I think it's something, Dr. Odumedia, you should please go back to him about, and you should push him on this. The second thing, which I'd like to talk about, is about partnerships. Dr. Odumedia had said, should Cama control partnerships? And the answer for me is, what is on the exclusive legislative list? Partnerships are not mentioned in any list, so it's residual. And cases of old decided that this is for the states. And Lagos State has its own law. So why does the federal government want to take that away from the states at a time when we're talking of better fiscal federalism, and we're talking about bringing a nation where the states can operate themselves, and laws are nearer people. So why should we have limited liability partnerships being controlled by Cama? I don't think it's constitutional, and even if it was, I don't think it is a wise use of space. Then I go very quickly, because I'm looking at my time, to insolvency. That is something that concerns every investor, domestic or foreign. If I do this business, Madam Chinedu has said, look, can I enforce the contract? At the end of it, if this man owes me money, can I get my money back? If this company owes money, what will happen to all of us? So someone spoke about netting, but the netting provisions forget that netting could involve a lot of things, Nigerian Stock Exchange, CSCS. So for those like Dr. Ogumedia, who has done this, I'm sure, in practice, you know that you interface with these agencies of government, and this one doesn't do anything about that. So we still have a big hole. A lot of foreign investors and international banks enter into all kinds of contracts of differences with Nigerian banks and Nigerian big corporates. And there's always a question as to the netting, as to how do you register it? How do you deal with these things? And, it's still very much a matter of touch and go. I thought the law would have clarified that. The law also looks at charges, and it still takes a lot of things that our courts have decided and hasn't taken advantage of this law to help us with the problems that Mr. Candy Johnson creates with the courts. Mr. Candy Johnson is a courtman, and his courts always give conflicting decisions. So one court would say, in a matter relating to receivership, only Federal High Court has jurisdiction. And then another court will say, well, the receiver entered into a contract. So it's a contract. It's the State High Court that has jurisdiction. And it then talks about liability of the receiver. And so you have all kinds of decisions of Nigerian courts that are conflicting on company law. And we did not take advantage of this law, which is what we do with laws. We codify and smoothen the surface of the law. All the bombs that have been created by the ripples of the reasoning of judges is corrected by legislation. So we didn't do that. And there's so many, many examples. So audience, please ask Mr. Candy Johnson those questions. He would answer. He's the expert on litigation. Other thing is this, still on charges and on insolvency. We say that a company can be wound up for 2,000 naira in 2020, 2,000 naira. Okay, they bring in a new concept of administration, which is fine. It's really nothing new. They just copied what has been in America for many, many years. They call it Chapter 10, Chapter 11 bankruptcy. They started it in the UK in 1986. It was called, under the Insolvency Act, and you had the administrator. Okay, we brought it in. But have we panel beated that to fit our local circumstance? What happens today when someone appoints me a receiver? I have to be, well, when I started practicing, when receivers were appointed, we didn't go to court. Receiver just took over possession. But now you go to court before you start your receivership. I thought the law would take care of things like that, but we haven't. And we ought to have seen the advantage of clarifying whether if I am a receiver, I have a right to take possession or I do not. I thought the law we look at what Bofia has said and what AMCON has said about charges and about priority and about ranking. So we didn't do that. And my good friend from Anthony Anderson Tax talked about the fact that we ought to make sure that these laws speak to each other. And because what will happen now is that if AMCON takes you to court, Mr. Johnson is going to say, well, yeah, you comply with AMCON now, but you not comply with Cama, because there's still some provisions in Cama that deal with this. And this is the case. So I would have thought that we would have made sure that there's relational integrity in what we are doing. Dangote is an example. UBA, Zenith Bank, businesses are now, Nigerian businesses are now doing businesses abroad. They have branches all over the place. In England, they have something called Slavenberg Register, which deals with registration of charges by companies operating in the UK but are incorporated abroad. And you have vice versa. We haven't dealt with that. So what is going to happen when Alhaji Dangote creates a charge over his shares in Ghana? Or what happens when his division in Sierra Leone creates a charge? Do you register it in Nigeria or do you not? These are things that we need to do the more we look at international business. Very quickly, the Act, talking of finance, prohibits the issuance of irredeemable preference shares. And you begin to ask it. So, Dr. Ogemedia, you're going to have to tell us why you are prohibiting the issuance of irredeemable preference shares. These are instruments that are the best examples of things that would allow people to come into your business and still allow you room to breathe and to do all kinds of interesting things. So I don't know why we have done that. And I think we need to look at it and rather seriously also. The other thing that I would like to mention very briefly, because I know my time is up, is that I think we can also look at the way we handle meetings and the protection of directors. With corporate governance, more and more responsibility is coming upon directors. You look at cases like Longe, MD of First Bank. He was sacked by First Bank. He went to court. First Bank lost. There is a reason why that happened. Chief Williams handled the case. I was in it at the time. Chief Akinjide was involved in the case. Chief Akinjide wrote pleadings of about, 20 pages. Chief Williams wrote pleadings of 1 page. And when Chief Akinjide was cross-examining, Chief Williams sat down, sat down like this, and I think at the time he pretended as if he was asleep. I said, any examination? He said, no cross-examination, just one question. Just one question. He just said, did you give notice of the meeting where you were going to sack this guy to this man? They said no. So Williams said, that's all. And on that basis, Longe won, in spite of all that brilliant Chief Akinjide said. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Candy Johnson, sorry.
Thank you very much, Professor Ajayi. Brilliant and effervescent as always. Thank you so much. It's very interesting. Just before we go to the Q&A session, I'm glad we called this session to discuss a law which seems like a magnum opus, and it seems it may end up being more a doorstopper than a magnum opus in the end. But sometimes I look at some of the laws that we make in this country, and you're right. The purpose of law is to guide behavior for a specific purpose. So we say improvement of economic activity, improvement of capital, access of capital to your markets in this case. And so therefore your task should be to simplify and to clarify rather than to complicate. And when you then tell me you have an additional 400 sections or whatever, I start to become alarmed. And very often again, I see with our laws that when they're enacted, it's like someone who's describing, you ask a child to describe the working of an internal combustion engine. He can describe the noise, he can describe the smoke, but he can't really describe how the parts work because he hasn't studied it and it requires study. So then when Professor Ajayi talks about what are the decisions that have been given, receivership, decisions that have been given on corporate management, on share structure, on the power of shareholders, on the liability of directors, on a variety of these critical issues. So therefore, the creation of a law has to be predicated upon understanding of the existing state of business and how you want to regulate it. Because again, as I said, a company is a legal and an economic device. We regulate it in a legal way for economic purposes. So we have a situation where we're going to spend the next few years, I guess lawyers like myself will amuse themselves with earning a living from the confusions and contradictions, and nobody will benefit. At the end of the day, we'll be holding another 30 years when we're all much older. We'll be holding another seminar on the Cama 2060 and saying what a brilliant job we've done. So, well, good luck. But then the fact that we're talking about it now means that we can start in earnest to start dismantling and reorganizing it. Now we have had a lot of questions, and I've asked the questions we sent to me on WhatsApp. So I wasn't actually checking my emails while I was looking at my phone. I was trying to see the questions in order. And some of the questions that have been asked have been answered by statements made by the panel already. For example, the contradiction between the definition of a small company, which Chinedu Zomike addressed, the questions about, let me see if I can extract some of the questions to ask. One question that comes out, and I'd like to pose that question to Mrs. Ogemudia, is this: what are the new provisions in the amended act that encourage and protect retail shareholders as gatekeepers of good corporate governance, which is an important topic worldwide? So it should have been something that should have been imperative for this new law. Perhaps you can help us with that.
Thank you very much. In relation to retail shareholders, I think the main thing that the bill has provided for is transparency in terms of reporting, stronger corporate governance in terms of inclusion of independent directors. So that for us were some of the provisions that should help overall strengthen transparency for companies, which I think is one of the key issues for minority shareholders. Also, I just also providing for how the companies can be more efficient. So for instance, things you can do electronically today, which you could not do before. So for instance, notices. This week I was dealing with an issue where a company carried out a scheme of arrangement. Incidentally, the company was in the same building with a retail shareholder and issued the schemes of arrangement, was somehow omitted to deliver to its very neighbor, which was his shareholder, has gone ahead and carried out the scheme, and the shareholder was unable to participate, wasn't aware. One of the things that the Cama bill does is allow notices to be issued electronically if a shareholder indicates that that's okay and provides an address. And I think that will call for greater participation.
Okay, thank you very much. Another question that has come, which I think I would like to ask Dr. Zomike to please try and deal with this, as I don't know whether he knows the answer, because I of course have not studied this great extent. Two questions actually. The first question is, and I don't know who's asked this question, but it says, does the disclosure requirement for persons with significant control include affiliated, connected, related, and other parties? If Dr. Zomike, could you take that, please?
Okay, thank you very much. It's Mr. Zomike, not Doctor. But,
so, okay, it could be
yeah.
Doctor soon.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. So it doesn't. The control, I think the person is talking about transfer pricing and the way connected persons were defined in transfer pricing rules. That's not the case here. Here, you're just looking at beneficial ownership, because shares can be held in trust, shares can be held on behalf. And you have many companies maybe bidding for contracts or getting involved in activities, but you don't really know who is behind the companies. Like I mentioned when I was speaking, it's all geared towards transparency. Recently, we heard about the extractive industry also trying to put together the list of the beneficial owners behind some mining licenses and all that. When you talk about assets, maybe buildings and all that, they can also be held in trust. Again, there's a lot of push globally to find out, to have at least a list of the real owners. So even if you have 3 or 4 companies in terms of, you know, cascading down this holding that subsidiary, eventually who is the main person behind this. It helps to deal with issue of fraud. It helps to deal with issue of crime, terrorism, and all that, because at the end of the day, globally, you want to be able to track funds and know where they are and where they are going. And that's what this is talking about. So if you have, I mean, a company being managed by directors, being owned by shareholders, but you want to be able to say who are the owners of this company, and that's what that deals with. So it's not just on the, we have, based on the current law, people that own, I think 10% or more of companies are already disclosed, but they want to be able to say, but that's for public companies. But then this then extends to private companies to be able to say, you know, who are the beneficial owners. So it's not dealing with connected persons here, it's just dealing with the real owners of the businesses.
Okay, thanks very much. A quick question, which I think that since Mrs. Ogemudia is the owner of this bill, I'm going to put it to her because I wouldn't know the answer. It's a question from Okwe Shongo Sonya. I would like to know how the Cama bill addresses crowdfunding due to the fact that the current Cama 2004 does not permit private companies to raise funds from the public. I'm not even sure if this current Cama does deal with crowdfunding.
No, it doesn't. When we were reviewing the Cama, we were also reviewing the Investment and Securities Act, and both bills were submitted at the same time. In addition to the team, or part of the team included representatives of the Stock Exchange, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and crowdfunding, we thought, was better placed in the ISA. Unfortunately, the ISA bill has not progressed. And even the Cama that has progressed, I think we've recognized today the challenges that it has faced. So that was why we didn't address it here. We thought it was better placed in the ISA, and hopefully when that bill gets picked up, it might be fine-tuned further. So I think for now, anything for crowdfunding might have to be provided for in regulation rather than in the act.
Thank you very much. A question from Patricia Fagbure touches on a point which Dr. Orisakwe Lawrence raised, and I'm going to put it as a question, but if you want to comment on it, because it just ties into what you said. And they say, how can perpetuity be protected in a single shareholder situation if that sole shareholder dies? Also, a single director situation makes continuity difficult in the event of the demise of the single director. These issues will not make such businesses attractive to lenders or potential investors. It may be wise to encourage subscribers to see these provisions as mere entry points, which should be upgraded at the earliest possible date. And somebody else asked a question that is similar, which is, I don't know who, but my question is, why have single directorship for a company limited by shares? So again, what's the point? I mean, Professor Jai spoke earlier on about people could trade in their own names. So why are you creating a corporate entity, which when you have a single individual who could as well do business in his own name? I wonder if you'd like to comment on that.
I'm not sure who the question is for.
It was to Dr. Orisakwe Lawrence, but she's muted.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the first thing we are looking at is ease of doing business. So first of all, we want to open it up, encourage young people who would have been, who wouldn't be able to incorporate their businesses, can now incorporate their businesses, and then have liability limited, because a sole proprietor, there's so much he can do. But if he has limited liability, he can go far, he can do more business. So we are, first of all, thinking about encouraging people to come in and do the businesses. We want to have more entrepreneurs. So I think we want to jumpstart the economy with this. But in terms of perpetuity and people who will deal with them, I think we can leave that to those who are dealing with them. I mean, if people have the confidence to deal, I don't think we should discourage the young people. So I think that this is a way to jumpstart the economy rather than thinking of perpetuity.
Thank
sorry,
you.
Sorry, if I may add.
Go ahead, please. Yes.
I think what Dr. Orisakwe Lawrence has said is exactly reflective of the thinking. And that would have been my response if I was asked the question. We didn't think that we needed to legislate on everything, but I expect, and we expect that where a single director or single shareholder company is negotiating, for instance, maybe with a bank or a maybe private equity investor, those investors can insist on the conditions the company must satisfy in order for them to be comfortable to invest. And that those conditions might be you need more oversight. So you need a board that has people other than yourself and your family members. So, you know, an independent board, you need maybe a few more shareholders. So we expect that the commercial considerations for funding of such companies will drive a greater structuring to ensure better governance and oversight.
Thank you very much. There have been a lot of questions relating to the type of practitioners who can operate in the Corporate Affairs Commission. And so I'm going to tie that. There's a bigger question I'd like to ask Professor Jai, but before that, if I can just ask this question, because people keep asking this question about lawyers, accountants, etc., are trying to protect their business. You know, I think that some of this is counterproductive. In the modern day, many of these jobs are going to be done by machines in any event. So it's, I'm often bemused by people trying to defend themselves. But then someone asked a question about, and this is a question from Mr. Kola Lighton. He says, can the panelists speak to what is in the Act or should be done to get the Corporate Affairs Commission to be better, effective, and efficient and work less as another arm of the civil service? We need to do less with touts and get things done in the CAC. So I assume that he's assuming that the people who are operating, and I think that you can't really avoid that, but the people who are operating the mechanisms of the current company's law and even the company's house don't really understand what they're doing. And that's probably putting it mildly. But perhaps you may want to make a quick comment about that before I ask you the question I actually wanted to ask you, because of course, both yourself and certainly the other panels are sending people to the Corporate Affairs Commission to be delayed for several days. What could we do to
Can I, with your kind permission, ask Chief Kusukunawa to answer? Because he was a Registrar General when the CAC was the CAC. Chief.
Okay.
Chief
President Kunawa, you're on the hot seat.
Yes. Chief, unmute yourself, sir. Unmute yourself, Chief.
He didn't know presidents could be asked questions. He thought that it's only panelists.
Oh, no, I honestly, I didn't catch that question because I was actually on the telephone again. But could you give me an idea? Hello?
How can we make the Corporate Affairs Commission be better, effective, and more efficient and work less as another arm of the civil service? And the questioner ends with the question, we need to get touts, do less with touts and get things done in the CAC.
Well, I mean, you will recall that I was in that organization way back in '73 as an assistant registrar, but things have certainly moved up. We're now in 2020, and you could see that the CAC is about almost 100 times bigger than what it was when we were there. But having said that, obviously, what we need to do is that to rely more on technology. And if you, I mean, they're doing it, the working, but it's so epileptic these days, even the facilities at the CAC. And I think you really do need to keep out the touts from operating in the CAC. But definitely it could be better managed by technology, whereby you can, like Chinedum, Dr. Lawrence said, you know, you could have people actually sit up in somewhere in Onitsha or indeed in Daura and communicate very easily with the CAC. As of now, everybody has to go up to Abuja, literally go up to Abuja to get anything done. The second part I'd like to mention is this issue of this, if I may, is the issue of the limited by guarantee, which Professor Joy talked about. Really and truly, like he said, there is absolutely no reason for the Attorney General wanting to insist on being to sign off on all these on the issues limited by guarantee. It doesn't make any sense to me. And in any case, I thought the bill would have it somewhere that limits the time when these applications are made, that if they are not reported on, or sanctioned or approved by the AG, then it means that the CAC can just go ahead and register some of these companies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You know, Prof, the question I was going to ask you is sort of, there are many mechanisms that are thrown up by this new law, which are, if I may put it this way, post-conceptual, because, you know, Dr. Risakwe Lawrence talks about conceptualizing what you want to achieve before you try and affect it. And many of these things, so one of the questions that occurred to me when we were starting this preparation for this seminar was, do we actually need companies? I mean, that question arises when you're now having single person entities. Do we need and it's not inevitable that you have companies. Indeed, even in England, where modern company law started, at some point after the South Sea bubble, companies were abolished entirely because they were regarded as instruments of fraud. So you have to have a specific objective you want to achieve. And we've put so many things in this law right now. And I think that one of the challenges we face here is the overreach. You've spoken about the Attorney General's intention to retain power over certain type of companies. Is there a problem with the political motivation and structure? Because you asked the question earlier on, why does a limited liability partnership have to be regulated by the federal government? It's an important question. Why does a business entity that is doing business only in Enugu State have to be regulated in the federal government? Why can't it be created in that local environment? Is this a problem with the structure of our federation? Is it a problem with structure with our politics? Or is it a problem with the thinking of our governments?
I think, thank you. And I hope I don't get into trouble. But I think
if you need a good lawyer, I know some people.
I will hire you any day. So I think, yes, these are philosophical questions that go to the root of what this is all about. Companies law is about business and enterprise. And that's what it really should be. And we smuggled into it also, you know, law on trustees, incorporated trustees. Now we have a separate law on cooperatives, which is a totally different regime. Personally, and speaking for myself, I think if, you know, I mean, as you have in America, for instance, which is a federation, companies are incorporated in states. You have Delaware companies, you have New York companies. I mean, ask Chief Chris Okuno, he has companies in about 6 different states in the United States. I mean, Chief Okuno, we're talking about your various companies. So you're talking.
Yes, you know, you're my lawyer, so go ahead.
He meant to mute his mic, but he muted his video.
Oh, anyway, so honestly, I think we need to look at the nature of businesses. So for instance, let us look at banks. So what has CBN done? So CBN has categorized banks into microfinance banks, which are supposed to operate in a local government area, regional banks, which are supposed to operate in a region, national banks all over the country, and international banks, which have things outside the country. So why can't we adopt the same model and say, look, if I am a small SME and I just want to have a company because I want to limit my liability and I do want a business partner, but we're not going to go far. We're just going to stay around here being vulcanizers. As for now, we're not going to grow. Why can't that business be regulated and taxed in the state, as opposed to having to have someone in Abuja having to do that? But then if you are now doing interstate business, yes, maybe we can look at that going up. But let's even assume, for purpose of argument, that it's a good thing to make regulation of companies a national thing. The question then would be, how far should we go? And I think we have gone much, much too far. We have stepped into the terrain much too much. And I'll say the same thing about corporate governance. I personally think there's too much of corporate governance now. They now begin to treat us as if we ourselves were machines. And and I'm charging Mr. Dele Alimi to please undertake a study and ask how much directors read now. So Mr. Candy Johnson is a very busy lawyer. He's got his practice, or, Konya Ajayi or, Mr. Ogumi. We've got our practice. I'm director of 2 companies. And you give me papers that are this thick to read. The likelihood of my reading everything is reduced. And that's so, but I'd like you, sir, to undertake a study and see how well your directors are reading. When you pick directors that are retired, like Chief Chris Okuno, yeah, they have time. They'll read everything. But you pick someone who is 35 or 40, in the middle of life, struggling, trying to build his business. He's very good, very brilliant. You make him director, and you ask him to read, just too much. The likelihood of reading everything is low. So honestly, I think and there are many areas. So we talked earlier, Mr. Ezomike, about transparency and disclosure. So I'm a small company. I'm a very small company. My turnover is 10 million, and I own 10%. Why am I disclosing to CAC? What benefit? Whose benefits is that for? So we need to ask ourselves. Some of these things that we've done, I think, is a bridge too far. Thank you.
There's a question. Thank you very much, Professor.
Can I make a few comments, please?
Go ahead, please. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. It has been very interesting so far. But just a few things. First of all, laws, like somebody said earlier, is for guidance. No matter how good a law is, no law can implement itself. The law can never solve the problem of the quality of people that should implement it. So the law can only be as good as it can. We need to deal with the issue of the quality of people, of implementers separately. The law can't solve that. Secondly is that I'm aware that the business law section of the Nigerian Bar Association had a lot of input into drafting of this law. And some of the ideas that Professor Ajayi was bringing, they are very interesting, especially the issue of existing legal interpretations. I thought maybe those should have been considered, because that's very, very important. When you have existing interpretations and you're making a new law, you should consider all those. I'm not a lawyer myself, so I don't know all the laws that he quoted. I'm just a business consultant. But I thought that would have been very, very important, because the NBA was critical to this. The law is not perfect, but I think it's an improvement on what we have. And for a businessman who wants to do business today, I think it's good that if we get this one passed, signed, so that at least if there are future revisions that need to be made, of course, we can always take that. Somebody asked a question about what is the current status. My understanding is that, of course, the National Assembly has passed it, both the Senate and the House of Rep, and it's now with the President for assent. It went to the President July 7th, I think, earlier this month. So hopefully it gets signed. The issue of incorporation, regulation by states and federal, it goes back to the issue of federation, really. What we have seen, okay, let me put it this way. Now, for all these years, we don't have a federal law guiding partnerships. How come it's only Lagos State that found it necessary to have a law guiding partnerships? Why didn't other states take on that mandate?
Actually, sorry, some other states have, not only Lagos. Some other states. Carry on, yeah.
Okay. That's good information, because when we did the check earlier, it was only Lagos that we knew that had something recent. And so today, the small businesses that we talk about, I think what happened was that the current Cama made it very, very difficult for them to participate. So they more or less ignored it completely. So we have most small businesses of, like Professor mentioned, 10 million naira turnover and all that. They don't even bother with Cama. Most of them are just unincorporated. But that then meant that they were not able to enjoy the benefits of incorporation. I think the attempt was to see if you can bring some of them in. I don't think that creates a new problem. I think you're just trying to, it's still a choice. They can still choose to remain unincorporated. But if I say today that Enugu State should regulate companies, so if I set up in Enugu, what then happens? Tomorrow I want to expand to Abia State or Kogi State. I don't have to go and incorporate again in Kogi State. Doesn't that then even increase the level of compliance requirements and orders? So I believe that if the CAC can simplify the processes, now, like I mentioned, this law tries to make it possible for them to do electronic registrations, e-registration and all that. If it works the way it's envisioned, that you can sit down at your house in Daura or in Akwa Ibom and you register your company, I think it should be fine. I don't think the regulatory part of it becomes a problem. I think if the level of regulation is reduced, which is envisaged, the businesses have a choice to grow at their own rate. Of course, by the time you become a bigger company, you're supposed to have more directors, you're supposed to have auditors and company secretary. But as a small business, you don't need those. And that's what this Cama tries to solve.
Thank you very much. You know, the point that you make about why can't you have corporate entities established in states, of course, is answered by the fact that you can have partnership, which are also business combinations established in states. But that's not a new or particularly difficult problem. In many other federations, the United States, for example, states regulate the incorporation of companies. And all that happens is that within the context of constitutional arrangements, that each state would recognize the legal entities in another. You could as well ask the question, how does a company that is a Beninois company or Unilever do business in Nigeria? The fact is that if you want people to do business with you, then you have to do two things. You have to establish that the means by which they're regulated means they're safe to do transactions with, and secondly, that there's economic value in their coming into your territory. If that is the case, then it'd be very easy. Part of the problem with Nigeria is the lack of clear federal and state arrangements. So we have an imperfect federation, but then that problem would not arise if this had been addressed correctly. But then this is why I asked the question about the tendency, which has been promoted amongst Nigerians in policy and in law, to increasingly concentrate power in specific places. And that, I think, is a problem for innovation. It's a problem for the application of ingenuity and for the attraction of capital to various areas. Because if I want to do business only in Lagos, why can't I do business only in Lagos or in Port Harcourt? And I have to go. The additional complication is having to go to the federal government and ask for permission to do things which, for example, in the case of limited liability partnership, has been done already in some states, and now they want you to go to Abuja, and they will tell you that you have to register. Even though you're registered in one state, you have to go and register there again. All that means is another set of bureaucrats have their hands down your throat. So someone asked a question, which I don't know where anybody wants to take it, but in light of some of the issues that have been raised about this new law, is it too late for the president to reconsider consenting? Mr. Zomike, you already answered that he should sign it anyway. Mr. Gimudia, I guess you say he should sign it anyway.
Yes.
Dr. Orisaki Lawrence, yeah.
Okay,
sign it anyway.
You should sign it anyway.
Okay.
Yes.
We're moving up the ladder.
Okay.
I think that where we are is so far backward.
Yeah.
This Cama bill takes us forward. It does not take us to where we should be, but I think we all recognize the challenges of this country. And my involvement in this bill revealed one thing to me. We might be the section on business law and the experts and the everything, but the legislative process is in the hands of politicians. And if you cannot find a compromise for your bill, that bill is dead. So like has been said here, which I didn't say because I don't want to say anything that will jeopardize this bill. But the thing that hampered the bill from being signed the last time was a minor point on the Attorney General approving companies limited by guarantee. And so where we can stay here and question why should he have to approve it. But the truth is, do you want your bill to pass or not? And if that is the price that has to be paid for the bill to pass, then I think it's a small price to pay. I don't think we have a perfect bill. Somebody put on the chat that in the UK right now in COVID, there's something called a light touch administration. Why don't we consider that? I think that the fact that we even get administration in at all gives us something that's better than what we have. And it may not be COVID ready, but it certainly gives us the tool and we can tinker with things. I was really hoping the RG would have been able to join us to discuss some of the things that were raised specifically in relation to the CAC. But before I mute my mic, I just wanted to clarify. The president of the IOD had said, I think it was Professor Ajayi that had mentioned the low threshold for a company being unable to pay its debt, 2,000. I just wanted to clarify that that's in the bill, that is now 200,000. So it's not, yes, 200,000. It's not huge, but it's not 2,000 anymore. And then there's some other minor changes like that. Yeah, and then on the status of the bill. So I learned from the RG last week that the current status is the bill is with the presidency for assent. Then it was sent to certain key agencies, one of which is the CAC, for a final look through. Even in reviewing the bill in preparation for this session, I found cross-referencing errors and some errors that were, I guess, inadvertently introduced in this process of amending the bill since 2018 to date. So I'm going to flag that with the RG, but based on what he said, there was a lot of confidence that we're almost at the point where the president has to now just put pen to paper, and hopefully we'll be there by next month, but we'll see. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And someone asked a question, which I'm not going to ask you to answer, but it's just to resonate with Dr. Isakwila. And somebody asked the question, how does the new bill cater for the electricity power challenges faced by businesses, especially the availability of prepaid meters to protect from outrageous billing of startups? You know, it's very interesting. We're talking about enabling business. And I would be curious to know, if anybody does, what was the role of the enabling business undertaking in the federal government in putting this bill forward? Because you can't just set something up in the air. Maybe Mr. Ogemudia can tell us something about that.
Okay, so the committee that prepared this bill had a strong representation from the MBAS bill, but from a lot of other agencies, including the PEBEC. And in fact, there were certain portions of the bill, like insolvency, that PEBEC took as his baby and really drove the amendment of that. So they had a significant impact. And I assume, even in relation to getting the bill passed a second time and liaising with the Attorney General's office and the presidency as to dealing with those areas of concern. I know that PEBEC has been pushing for this bill because they believe that it will strengthen our rankings in the World Bank Ease of Doing Business ranking. So PEBEC has been very active. They consider this bill one of their projects, and they've been driving it, and they were very involved in the drafting.
Thanks very much. There's some questions. I was hoping that because we have about 10, 15 minutes left, that we might have had the opportunity of the RG turning up, so we could ask him some questions. People have asked questions about the capacity of the Corporate Affairs Commission. We referred to that previously, but it's something that he might want to address himself. Many of the questions are being asked about this question about whether the AG should consent or not, about the workings, and it would have been really insightful to ask him questions relating to how the capacity of the Corporate Affairs Commission was being improved to administer this whole new grab of assignments it was undertaking for itself. But I suspect that we may not have him here with us. There's a question that I had asked Professor Jai before, and we discussed it. It seemed that one of the most important things, certainly for myself as a disputes resolution lawyer, is acknowledging the inevitability of disputes and the fact that potentially conflicting court decisions, and that is a major problem which deals with the capacity of the judiciary. That's for another topic for another day. But we have a problem with conflicting decisions on a variety of critical mechanisms within the company's process. Now, I noticed that there's a provision in this new Cama about creating what they call an administrative proceedings committee to determine disputes. I wonder if someone is able to comment on the status. I know that I don't want to put too much of a burden on Mr. Ogemudia because she's the one carrying the burden for the entire government. But as I said, she's a heavyweight, because I really wonder how that is going to work, what's going to be the status, what's going to be the capacity, who's going to be the people who will decide those issues, and whether you think it's going to be an effective mechanism for resolving some of these conflicting problems that we have right now.
Dr. Ogemudia.
You're muted.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I actually thought the question was for Professor Ajayi and the
oh no, as I said, I mean, I can comment, but I want to know what was the thinking behind it. Because,
yes, so I will admit that the APC was introduced later on, after we'd handed over the bill. So it's you know, I'm just like you. I understand that from the reason why it was introduced was to try and ease the simplify the process of dealing with disputes and trying to get things out of the court system. So like I had alluded to before, there were many things in the Cama that require the CAC would have to go to court, get a conviction to enforce a certain provision of the act in relation to breaches. So the APC is supposed to remove that requirement to go to court, I guess, because of the issues we have with how long litigation takes currently in Nigeria. And so that where there is any dispute or anyone needs to challenge a decision that has been taken by the CAC, it's more like an alternative route and hopefully a faster means of resolving such issues than the court system.
Okay, thanks very much. Because the problem, of course, is when you create these quasi-judicial bodies, is that unless you regulate them themselves, you have a whole series of problems with determining the rights of parties. And if the APC in the SEC is anything to go by, it's going to be fraught with problems, because the APC in SEC is a mechanism which I think is very dubious, to put it simply. So I don't know whether Professor Jai has an additional comment.
Yeah, so the first comment is that you can see it was brought in surreptitiously. Copies of the bill that are available, I mean, and I discussed with you, I have various versions of the bill. There's nothing on the APC. And this happens, that people plunge things into statutes. The experience going by ISA or SEC is that you're just going to create more conflict, because if you go to APC, I'm going to go to court. And when I go to court, someone is going to say, no, it's not for the court, it's for the APC to deal with. And that's the experience that we have. The second thing is that there's a question with the APC, whether it's an arbiter that is impartial. APC, except it's not going to be constituted by CAC or the Registrar General, because the question would be, well, I have a dispute with CAC, and then the CAC constitutes a panel. Then I'm going to be like, well, there's no justice, because it's got to be fair. So I'm not sure that this is a solution to our problems, just creating more and more courts. Bofia, the new bill on banks, is also creating a new court to handle banking disputes. So very soon, what you're going to find is they're going to have land courts, divorce courts, everybody will just create his own court. And what will happen is that nothing will get done. It is really, really about the system and about the people and about the control of the courts. And we can make it simpler and better. As was mentioned, CAC itself just needs to be a lot more efficient, a lot more professional, and rely more on technology. The more it relies on technology, the lesser the chance of it getting its decisions wrong. The question of exercise of discretion will be reduced, and the question of challenge will be reduced. So, and we don't need any statute to get CAC to embrace technology. CAC must do so. And it's just, interesting that today CAC will still require you to have wet ink. They insist, the thing must be wet ink, otherwise they won't take the paper from you. And I don't know why they must do so in this day and age. So, and if for instance, CAC used blockchain technology, the question of people putting documents in files and removing documents from files will not happen, because blockchain, as you understand it today, is locked, and you can't mess with it. So personally, I think it's a bad idea to create this body. CAC should focus more on being more professional and being more efficient. And we hope that Mr. Yemi Kandi Johnson would stop making too much money out of people's misery.
Well, misery is a choice. They can be miserable if they want. But thanks very much. I'm told just now that the Registrar General, who we want to ask close questions, has left the airport. But I think that the chances of, he says he's looking for somewhere in Bauchi where there's internet connection. So I'm not so sure. And one question that was asked, Professor Oyewa apparently asked the question of how one can read the bill as it's not on the National Assembly website. I think that I asked one of my juniors to get it for me, and so I don't know where they got it from. But I assume maybe someone knows where it can be obtained from. I don't know. That we can get it
on the internet. You should just type Cama 2020.
Yeah, but I think the issue is that Professor Jay mentioned, there are so many versions of it that you may not be able to know which one is the final version that was sent to the president. But at least a general version, we can give you a whole idea of what the changes are. But I think we'll have to wait to see which one is the final version, really.
Okay. That's
the version I read as the most recent version I got from the NESG, and because of the position of the NESG and their involvement, I assume that is slightly current. But I know that based on what the RG said as at last week, several agencies were commenting on it. I don't know that right now even the NESG has the most.
Yeah, this highlights a problem which may not be a company problem, but the fact is that it smacks of high dysfunction if you cannot get a genuine copy of a bill that has been placed before the president. I mean, the fact that before it went before the president, it should have been available on the National Assembly site. It should have been easy to access one copy. The fact that you have this sort of situation and the problem of putting in sections, if something suits me, I change it, and one person can hold up an entire bill regulating a critical foundation of the economy to preserve political power. It's very disturbing. And I think that this is what a lot of this discussion indicates is dysfunction. I hope that's not, I could use a much stronger word, but it's dysfunction in our legislative and administrative and legal processes. I mean, it's mind-boggling. So we've come to the end, really. There's so much discussion we could go on, but we said 2 hours. We've got to that stage. Unless any panelists raise their hand and want to make an additional comment, I propose to round up by thanking our hosts for having us here, and hope that next time the president invites us, there will be something to drink. No, any comments from any of the panelists? No? Well, thank you very much. Look, this is a discussion that's going to go on forever. Across Nigeria, there are panels of breathtaking brilliance. And when I sit down on a panel like this and have discussion, and people, young and old, from a wide variety of parts of the country, a wide variety of ages and places of work, and they're discussing the fundamentals of the administration of our government and the administration of our economy, it always leaves me pleased and then surprised. Because if we have so much talent in this country, it can't be magic that we're so backward. We have all the equipment, we have all the ability. I hope that we will continue to participate in thinking about how our country makes progress and in fighting to be sure that the best of our effort becomes the guiding light for our country. I'd like to thank all of you for the opportunity. Thank you for participating with me and for giving me the chance to boss you all around a bit. And thank you to Mr. Alimi. Thank you to President Okunowo. And thank you to the Institute of Directors, which is the leading body for corporate practice and corporate law and corporate behavior in the world, and obviously now in Nigeria. Thank you very much, everybody. Good evening and goodbye.
Thank you very much, everyone. Just before we say the final goodbye, I thank you, our able moderator. It's been a wonderful session. Obviously, we've not had the last of this, and definitely the Institute will look at that. Let me assure all participants that the keynote address of the RG, which unfortunately was not able to deliver personally, would be forwarded to everybody. And the recording, the transcript of these, okay, let me not use the word transcript now, but at least the recording would also be sent to all participants to be able to at least listen to everything all over again. And I also want to use the opportunity to invite everyone here to the launch of the IOD Code of Ethics as part of our mandate in the corporate governance space. We have also prepared a Code of Ethics, which we hope that adherence would help to improve businesses and performances and ethical behavior for businesses by directors, especially in Nigeria. It's for members of the Institute and staff of the Institute, but we hope that other stakeholders will be able to use this as a Bible to help them in ethical behavior and what to do when confronted with a challenging situation in terms of what is the right thing to do. This code will be launched next week, Thursday, just a week from now, on the 6th of August, and through the same online platform on the 6th of August, 2020. And I implore everyone to please go to the IOD website. You could log on and register to participate. The Honorable Minister of Industry is a special guest of honor. The chairman of the occasion is Dr. Christopher Kolade. And we have a very strong panel. Just like this panel, the moderator is Professor Dion Russell, who is the CEO of the Ethic Institute of South Africa. And we have Oscar Oyama, the CEO of Nigerian Stock Exchange. We have Bola Adeshola, the Vice Chairman Africa of Standard Chartered Bank. And we have Professor Bolaji Owasaoye, the Chairman of ICPC in that panel. So it's really going to be a worthwhile, just like this. And I want to say thank you to everyone. You have thanked IOD, but I want to say a big thank you to you, moderator. You've really made this a wonderful discourse. I say a very big thank you to you. It's been the comments I've seen on the chat page, it's like everybody is happy. And I want to say a big thank you to Mrs. Chinedu Morisakwe Lawrence. Thank you very much, madam, for the perspective you brought into this. I want to say a big thank you to Mrs. Ozovu Ogemudia. You ensure we didn't miss the RG too much. Thank you very, very much. And Prof, thank you very much. Well, I won't say anything because Mr. Candidate Johnson said something about you, and you really proved him right. Thank you very much for the other side of these issues that you brought forward. I really appreciate that. And of course, you said it's Mr. Simply Mr. Chinedu Ezomike. I say a very big thank you to you too for coming. And Mr. President, inadvertently you are roped in as a panelist, and you didn't disappoint.
That's good.
Thank you very much for coming. And I want to thank all our participants, close to 400 people. And I'm happy that we are able to make your day. I look forward to seeing you all next week during the launch of the code. And have a very wonderful Eid al-Kabir.
Mr. DG, just before you sign off, Mr. Moderator, Mr. Yemi Candid Johnson, SAN, I just thought I should let you know that I put it out there, out there that IOD didn't have any, didn't participate at all in this draft, in the bill. We decided to take on this particular subject because it affects our members, because they run these companies and they just need to know what exactly is they're up to, or they're going to be up to when they start the various what have you interaction with this act when it's eventually signed. IOD didn't take any part at all in the discourse. I also wished, at least if I can put it out there as well, that I think that IOD should actually have been invited to be on the commission, a representative of IOD to be on the commission, just as ICANN and ANAN, and of course the ICSAN, I think, are on that commission. But again, that's something we would discuss with the DG, with the RG going forward. Thank you very much. Once again, the DG has said it. I thank you all. Have a lovely, lovely weekend. God bless you.
Thank you very much. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.